Good morning. I'm going to be going ahead and calling the meeting to order for the California Board of Accountancy. Today is November 16th, 2017. My name is Alicia Burhan. I am the president of the board. We are going to go ahead and do a roll call, and we're going to start with Ms. Leon on the left.
Xochitl Leon.
Katrina Salazar.
Dan Jacobson.
Carola Nicholson.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Deirdre Robinson.
Mark Silverman.
Michael Savoy.
Alicia Burhan.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Jose Campos.
Sonia Youngson Park.
George Familette.
Okay, and we have a quorum. Thank you all for being here today. So the CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority of the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. You will notice our board members are referencing tablets during their meeting. The tablets allow the board members to more easily access meeting materials and are not being used to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item within the board's jurisdiction. So anyway, we will go ahead and get the ball rolling. So moving on to item 1. Report of the President. It is my pleasure to introduce 3 of our new board members here today. We're going to go ahead and start with Mr. Jacobson, my fellow Orange County resident. Mr. Jacobson was here in September, but I am pleased to welcome him officially to the board. Mr. Jacobson is an attorney. He was appointed by the Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Rendon, on September 1st, 2017. He's an adjunct professor of law at Pacific West College of Law and the author of numerous scholarly articles, an expert witness consultant in the field of property casualty insurance, and the chair of the Democratic Foundation of Orange County. Mr. Jacobson has practiced civil litigation law in California since 1988. He has served on the Board of Governors of the California Insurance Guarantee Association and as a temporary judge for the Orange County Superior Court. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Jacobson to the Board of Accountancy. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And his bio is also in your folder if you have any questions. I'm also pleased to welcome our new board member, Luz Molina Lopez. Ms. Lopez was appointed by Governor Brown on October 11, 2017, and she is the technical proposal writer, and I'm going to butcher this name, I'm so sorry, the Ajinomoto Althea Inc.
Ajinomoto.
Thank you. Since 2011, where she was a manufacturing associate from 2004 to 2010. Ms. Molina Lopez is a member of the Hispanas Organized for Political Equality, HOPE, and the Parks, Recreation, and Senior Citizens Advisory Board of National City. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Molina Lopez to the California Board of Accountancy as our new public member.
Thank you.
So happy. And her bio is also in the folder as well. And finally, we are so happy to welcome our new board member, Carol, is it Carola?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Nicholson. And Ms. Nicholson was appointed also by Governor Brown on July 25th, 2017. Ms. Nicholson is a certified public accountant and is the founding partner of Nicholson and Schwartz. Ms. Nicholson previously worked for Ernst & Young as a senior accounting manager and was later as a new business development director. So, Ms. Nicholson is a member of the California Society of Certified Public Accountants, the Santa Barbara Bull Foundation Board of Directors, and the 19th District Agricultural Association. So, and the Santa Barbara Fair and Exposition Board of Directors. That's actually kind of cool. So please help me in welcoming Ms. Nicholson as our new board member for the California Board of Accountancy. So welcome to all of you. All right. So thank you for all of that. Okay, so moving on to item B, we are going to be discussing the California Board of Accountancy Member Interest Committee Survey. So the committee interest survey will be used by the next CBA president to appoint members to the Committee on Professional Conduct, Enforcement Program, Oversight Committee, the Legislative Committee, and the Strategic Planning Committee, as well as appoint CBA liaisons to the Qualifications Committee, Peer Review Oversight Committee, and the Enforcement Advisory Committee. So attachment 2 is from the CBA Member Guidelines and Procedures Manual and provides detailed information regarding the CBA committees. The Qualifications Committee and the Enforcement Advisory Committee will have Northern and Southern California liaisons, and the Peer Review Oversight Committee will exclusively meet in Northern California in 2018 and will only have a Northern liaison. So once you have once you have reviewed the information, please fill out the attachment and return to Ms. Reed by Friday, December 1st, 2017. And I would also like to acknowledge that Ms. Wright has joined us as well, so if you could please add her to our list. Are there any questions regarding the member interest survey? Any comments from the public? Okay, thank you. We will go ahead and move on to item C, and report on the National Association State Boards of Accountancy annual meeting held on October 29th through November 1st, 2017. I was pleased to represent the Board of Accountancy during this meeting in New York City. NASBA's annual meeting provides a forum for the accountancy boards to meet on a national level to discuss critical policy, standard setting, and enforcement issues related to the effective regulation of the accountancy profession and consumer protection. NASBA provides leadership assistance, promotes ethics and integrity, provides resources to promote consistency and uniformity amongst the different public accounting jurisdictions, and provides guidance and direction to enhance the enforcement capability of the boards. So at this event, there were speakers from the Public Company Accounting Oversight Committee, International Ethics Standards Board of Accountants, multinational CPA firms, and the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And topics discussed included major regulatory issues involved in ensuring the board's licensees meet the public's expectations. Through plenary presentations, regional meetings, and informal gatherings, we were encouraged to share our views with colleagues from other jurisdictions and consider ways in which accountancy boards can be responsive to the public's needs. So some of the topics discussed were rethinking peer review administration, CPA advances, latest Uniform Accountancy Act and model rules. So we discussed that. Another thing we discussed was recruitment of students, and I did mention that we had our board meeting in September at Cal State Fullerton, and actually when we had our regional meeting, they were really impressed with the fact that we were doing outreach on a college campus. So well done you for making that happen. There was also a legislative update, an annual business meeting, and the new NASBA leaders were installed into office. So California continues to be the largest population of accounting professionals and also has the largest volume of examination and licensing candidates in the nation. This meeting provided an opportunity for me to participate in discussions on crafting of national policies that will aid the CBA in meeting its consumer protection mission. So I would like to thank the Department of Consumer Affairs, Business Consumer Services, and the Housing Agency and the Governor's Office for their support and approval of this trip and for recognizing the importance of this out-of-state travel. Given that we are the largest, we have the largest amount of CPAs, I really do appreciate that on behalf of the CBA. So are there any questions or discussion? Ms. Wright?
Thank you. Did the issue come up with respect to the states that have legalized adult use cannabis and NASBA coming out with any kind of a model rule that would provide direction to boards regarding the ethical concerns of practitioners for that new business?
It was brought up on the last day I was there, but there was very little discussion on the implementation or anything like that coming up. So I did discuss when we were talking with our regional meeting. We had Oregon in the room, Washington and Colorado, not Colorado, but Washington and Oregon, and we did discuss that we were in the middle of trying to figure out all the nuances of what is going to be taking place once cannabis is officially legalized in 2018, but it was not an overall discussion. But that's something
So they do not intend to come out with any kind of a model rule or guidance?
They
to
did
boards?
not, that was not mentioned at all. But that's something we could probably bring up when our next president is going to NASBA next year. So, any other questions or discussion? Any comments from the public? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item D, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy Committee appointments. Okay, So, item D provides members with information regarding committee appointments with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy. The following California Board of Accountancy members were appointed to the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy Committee. Katrina Salazar, CPA. She was reappointed to the Enforcement Resources Committee, and the Enforcement Resources Committee promotes effective, efficient, and where appropriate, uniform enforcement of professional standards by boards of accountancy. Ms. Salazar was selected to serve on the Strategic Planning Task Force as well, and the Strategic Planning Task Force ensures that the strategic plan reflects the current priorities and objectives of NASBA and its current boards. And Ms. Kathleen Wright, CPA, was appointed to the CPE Committee. The CPE Committee oversees the CPE Working Group and related statement on standards for continuing professional education programs. The committee also develops and promotes uniform rules and requirements for continuing professional education among jurisdictions. So thank you very much for the two of you serving on these boards moving forward. Okay, so moving on to item E, announcement of the California Board of Accountancy Leadership Award. This is the fun part. So as part of the 2010-2012 strategic plan, the CBA developed an employee recognition program as a way to acknowledge CBA staff for their dedication and efforts in assisting the CBA to meet its mission of consumer protection. So as a result, the CBA Leadership Award for Excellence was launched. This year will be the 7th year the award is being presented. Management evaluates all staff at the CBA and nominates those who best meet the criteria, some of which include providing consistently superior service through interactions with CBA staff, clients, and other external stakeholders, and creating or implementing innovative practices, techniques, or systems resulting in significant improvements in service, and always exhibiting a positive attitude regarding work and coworkers. So this year, the CBA selected 2 staff members who met and exceeded that criteria. So I'm going to introduce one of them first, and then we'll go on to the second one. The first person I would like to introduce is Allison O'Connor. So I would like to have you come up. So, and thank you for your service. Audience, so be real nice to them. Allison started with the CBA in 2005 and as an office technician in the initial licensing unit. In July 2007, she was promoted to a management services technician in the enforcement division and received a subsequent promotion to a staff services analyst in the enforcement division's citation unit in September of 2016. In Allison's current position, she has mastered the roles and responsibilities for the citation process. In addition to citations, she has regularly assists others with complaint intake and preliminary analysis for non-technical investigations. Holy cow, you do a lot. Allison was also instrumental in the CBA's move to the new location. Thank you. Taking the lead on organizing, packing, and unpacking the enforcement file room in the new location, and in addition to demonstrating a high work ethic, Allison always has a positive attitude, is professional, extremely reliable, and provides superior customer service internally to fellow CBA staff members and externally to CBA stakeholders. Congratulations on this. Remember, filter to make us look good. Congratulations, Allison. Thank you so much. All right, the next person I'd like to bring up is Seek Run. You know, is he here in the audience? Don't be nervous. It's all good. Welcome. So Seek started with the CBA in 2015 in the Enforcement Division. Come this way. People can see you. It's not just about me. Oh, okay. So she presently serves as the staff liaison to the Enforcement Program Oversight Committee and Peer Review Oversight Committee, and previously served as the staff liaison for the Enforcement Advisory Committee. In this role, she is required to prepare a majority of the meeting materials and often attend the meetings. SEEK provides all the enforcement statistics for the Executive Officer Monthly Report and is responsible for the development of the Enforcement Activity Report at each CBA meeting, including redesigned version, which is in your materials today.
Very nice.
SEEK has a strong work ethic and strives to provide excellent customer service. She has a positive attitude and comes to work daily with a smile on her face. So SEEK is a true asset to CBA as well as Allison, and they understand that the mission of consumer protection and are hardworking in their role to assist us with this meeting. So we'd like to go ahead and present this award to you, and thank you so much for your service. And those high in the offices. All right. Congratulations to you both. Okay. Going ahead and moving on to item F, discussion and possible action regarding the proposed change to the California Board of Accountancy's September 2018 meeting dates. And I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Reed.
Good morning. Agenda item 1F provides members with a proposed change to the September 2018 CBA meeting calendar, changing the date of the September 13th through 14th, 2018 CBA meeting to September 20th and 21st of 2018. The September 13th through 14th, 2018 CBA meeting date coincides with the final deadline to file tax returns for partnerships and S corporations with extensions. For members' reference, the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur will be observed starting the evening of September 18th, 2018 and ending the evening of September 19th, 2018. The CBA may choose to make a motion to change the September CBA meeting date to September 20th through the 21st, 2018. At this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Burhow and would be happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to open it up to the committee members for discussion.
I move to change the date.
Second.
That was quick. All right. Any other questions or discussion? Oh, yeah, we have our first by Mr. Savoy and a second by Ms. Robertson. Ms.
I
Salazar.
would just ask that when the president at this time schedules it, maybe they consider starting a little late to allow for folks to travel the morning of to get to the meeting, so they're not at the end of the holiday trying to travel. A lot of our members and our folks try to come the night before, and that may be difficult with the
Oh, okay,
Jewish
so maybe we
holiday
can make an
preceding it.
adjustment.
So I support it, but would ask maybe that just be noted for
Okay.
planning at the date.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, public comments, I know. Any public comments on the new committee dates? Okay, seeing none, call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Jin Oyang,
Yes.
Sunny Young-Sun Park,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
All right, with that, it passes unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item G, discussion and possible action regarding the California Board of Accountancy's report to the legislature and director of the Department of Consumer Affairs pursuant to Business and Professions Code Section 5096.21F. Mr. Franzella.
Thank you. Good morning. So the CBA is being asked to approve the report to the legislature and DCA director regarding the mobility provisions. The report itself is separated out from the materials, so that's the document I'll be referencing. This is the third iteration of the report, with the previous two having been reviewed by the mobility stakeholder group. All edits and suggestions have been incorporated into this recent iteration. The report, which is now being titled California's Mobility Program for Accountancy, Implementation, Enforcement, and its Consumer Benefits, represents the culmination of a multi-year effort to effectively implement the mobility provisions and assess the impact on consumers and licensees. The report before you uses the design the CBA looked at in September. We've included the various pull quotes in selected areas of the report to emphasize the consumer protection benefits and various conclusions reached by the CBA as part of its evaluation of the mobility program. We've also prepared a letter that's addressed to the required parties, and it's been inserted directly after the cover page. And we anticipate issuing the report to the legislature and the director in early to mid-December. Staff requests the CBA approve the report to the legislature, and should any edits to the letter or the report be necessary, staff also requests the CBA delegate the final review and approval of the report to the CBA president. So at this time, I'm happy to turn it back over to members, and I'm prepared to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions or discussion from the board members? Okay, so hearing none, we just need to have a motion. Okay, all right. Is there a motion to approve the report to the legislature regarding the mobility provisions?
So moved.
All right, first by Ms. Salazar. Would you like a second? Second. Second by Ms. Robinson. Any other questions or discussion? Any Jim, something to say? Oh, okay. And any questions from the public?
I would just like to acknowledge and thank the Department of Consumer Affairs design staff who actually assisted. I think they did a fantastic job, and it's nice to have that resource available to us through the department. So just my appreciation to them.
Thank you very much for that. Okay. Any last call? Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote.
Kathleen Wright,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsung Park,
Yes.
Jen Oyang,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes. Okay, with that, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Franzella, for that. Okay, moving on to item H, developments since the February 2015 United States Supreme Court decision, North Carolina State Board of Dental Examiners versus the Federal Trade Commission. Ms. Gupta.
Yes, this is a very brief update. The FTC had their Economic Liberty Task Force meeting on November 7th, where basically they announced that they would be doing another roundtable discussion, and that they were seeking public comment from interested parties on topics relating to the state of empirical knowledge about the extent, growth, stringency of state licensing requirements, whether they're uniform or varied. So basically, they're trying to obtain information about the current state of economic learning, about the costs and benefits of licensing, including the effects on workers, consumers, competition, and the overall economy, and how the available evidence might guide policymakers. So they will be having another Economic Liberty Task Force meeting that I don't believe has been scheduled yet or wasn't on their website when I checked. But if anyone has public comment, feel free to check out the FTC's website and figure out how you can submit your comment. And I'll provide an update in the next meeting if there is one.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments from the board members? Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, moving on to item I, Department of Consumer Affairs Director's Report on Departmental Activities. We have Mr. Christopher Castrillo, Deputy Director, Office of Board and Bureau Services here today. Thank you so much for being here.
I love it. Thank you for having me.
All right. Oh, I do have to say nice things about you, so before you start.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, so.
I don't have to introduce myself. That's fantastic.
Well, I'm going to do that for you so you don't have to worry about it. So, but Mr. Castillo was appointed to the Department of Consumer Affairs in October of 2017. He was the legislative advocate for Shaw Yoder Antiwa Inc. from 2014 to 2017 and a legislative aide from 2013 to 2014. He was the field director for Dr. Richard Pan for Senate in 2014, a lead organizer at Grassworks campaigns in 2012 as a legislative assistant at Lehman, Levi, Pappas, and Sadler in 2010. And Mr. Castillo earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Planning, Public Policy, and Management, as well as a Political Science, both from the University of Oregon in 2009. So very impressive.
I think I'm done here. No.
Yeah, you don't need to say anything else.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you, President Burho, Vice President Savoy, and Executive Officer Bowers for having me here today. Really looking forward to providing you with an update from the Department of Consumer Affairs. I am a month into my tenure as the new Deputy Director for the Office of Board and Bureau Services. In addition to myself, there's been a number of staff changes over at the Executive Office at the department, which I wanted to share with you here today. My predecessor, Ms. Christine Lawley, who is the Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, she is now over at the Medical Board as their Chief Deputy, and we wish her all the very best in her new role over at the Medical Board. We have a new Chief Deputy Director, Christopher Schultz. He comes our way over from the Department of Insurance, and he started 2 weeks ago this past Monday. We have a new Deputy Director of Administration, Ms. Natalie Daniel, and she has been the Fiscal Supervisor at the Judicial Council of California since 2015. She'll be overseeing the department's Office of Human Resources, Business Services Office, and Fiscal Operations. In addition to the Office of Board and Bureau Services, in addition to me coming over to the Office of Board and Bureau Services, we are also expanding the Office of Board and Bureau Services, and we have 2 new Assistant Deputy Directors, Ms. Karen Nelson and Mr. Patrick Lee. Very happy to have them on board. Ms. Nelson has been the Chief Operations Officer at the American Leadership Forum, Mountain Valley Chapter, since 2014, and Mr. Lee has been the Assistant Chief of External Affairs at Covered California since 2015. The department's confident that these staff additions will strengthen our ability to pursue the department's mission and the services that we can provide to the various boards and bureaus. I'm very much looking forward to the opportunity with the Office of the Board and Bureau Services, to expanding on the services that we are able to provide all of our boards and bureaus. We're looking forward to taking a close look at licensing and enforcement best practices, in addition to keeping an eye and helping you all out with the various board meetings, executive committee meetings, and working with the board presidents, vice presidents, and executive officers on facilitating a wide range of needs and services that we provide at the department. So I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. A couple of just quick items. We had my opportunity to do the first board member orientation training yesterday, so thank you for the folks who were able to come and attend. Just as a reminder, within 1 year of a reappointment and with being appointed to a new board, that is a required training. We will provide you the dates for the upcoming board member orientation trainings for the upcoming year. Also, just a quick reminder on trainings, 2017 is a required sexual harassment prevention training year, which means even if you did take the training last year, it is required to do that training again this year. It's online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience. Just a couple of quick items that we have worked on recently. We had a pro rata open house this past week. As you are aware, pro rata is the process by which the department distributes costs amongst its boards and bureaus to cover all departmental services such as informational technology, legal, and publication services. We've also put together a pro rata work group, which held its first meeting in August and its second meeting earlier this month. The department is putting a high priority on communicating with all boards and bureaus about this important issue and working on being transparent and listening to how we'd like to structure and provide these services to you going forward. So it's a very important thing that we'll be continuing to do into the new year. Also, we had the quarterly meeting of executive officers this past October, and I wanted to note that we will also be doing an annual meeting of board presidents to ensure that Director Grafilo is available to hear any concerns, thoughts, questions, comments from the board presidents. That date is yet to be scheduled, but we will be following up with you and letting you know when we go ahead and get that on the calendar. With that, I just want to thank you for the opportunity and the time to introduce myself, the staffing changes over at DCA, and I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to working with you all here at the Board of Accountancy, and thank you for your partnership and all your great work. With that, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sure.
Well done. I would like to open up real quick to the board members if they have any comments or questions. Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, with that, thank you very much.
Easy.
Well
Okay,
done.
cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, well, moving on to item 2, the report from the Vice President, Mr. Savoy.
Thank you. This item is to recommend the following: the reappointment of Nancy Corrigan, CPA, as Vice Chair, and the reappointment of Joseph Rosenblum, CPA, as Chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The Enforcement Advisory Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I have conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that these individuals have met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve in a leadership capacity on the Enforcement Advisory Committee. I therefore recommend that Nancy Corrigan be reappointed as Vice Chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee effective January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
Okay, so this is technically a motion from you, correct? All right, is there a second?
Seconded.
All right, I think I heard Mr. Silverman, nice try. So I have a first from Mr. Savoy and a second by Mr. Silverman. Are there any comments or discussions? Or questions, rather? Any comments from the public? Okay, that will call for a vote.
Jen Oyang.
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Soshi Leon.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
And Corolla Nicholson.
Yes.
All right, with that, the motion passes unanimously.
My next recommendation and motion would be to recommend that Joseph Rosenblum, CPA, be reappointed as the Chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee, effective January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Savoy. Is there a second? Second. All right, I got you this time, Mr. Jacobson. All right, so first by Mr. Savoy, second by Mr. Jacobson. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
Corolla Nicholson.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Soshi Leon.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park.
Yes.
And Jen Oyang.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The vote passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to item B.
Secondly, the appointments and reappointments to the Qualifications Committee. This item is to recommend the following: the reappointment of Joanna Bolsky, the reappointment of Kimberly Sugiyama, CPA, as Vice Chair, and the reappointment of David Evans, CPA, as Chair of the Qualifications Committee. The Qualifications Committee assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. This includes conducting work paper reviews with the applicant or the employer present to verify that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. I have conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that each individual has met the appropriate requirement for license renewal and has demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve as either a member or in a leadership capacity with the Qualifications Committee. I therefore recommend that Joanna Bolsky be reappointed to the Qualifications Committee effective December 1st, 2017 through November 30th, 2019.
Okay, so I have a first by Mr. Savoy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Salazar. Any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines. Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Soshi Leon.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson.
Yes.
Jen Oyang.
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
And Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the vote passes unanimously.
I further recommend that Kimberly Sugiyama, CPA, be reappointed as the Vice Chair of the Qualifications Committee, effective January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
A motion by Mr. Savoy. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Familet. Any questions or discussion from the board? Any comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
All right, Kathleen Wright,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park,
Yes.
Jan Yang,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes. All right, vote passes unanimously. At this time, I'd like to turn the discussion and motion of the reappointment of David Evans, CPA, as Chair of the Qualifications Committee over to Vice President Savoy, so I can step out and Ms. Hines can step out.
I further recommend and make a motion to recommend that David Evans, CPA, be reappointed as Chair of the Qualifications Committee effective January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. I need a second.
Second.
Any board discussion? Any public comment? Please call for a vote.
Jan Yang,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Kathleen Wright,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
and Corolla Nicholson.
Yes.
Motion passes. Ladies? All right, last but not least, the appointments or reappointments to the Peer Review Oversight Committee. This item is to recommend the following: the appointment of Fiona Tam, the reappointment of Renee Graves, and the reappointment of Jeffrey DeLizer as Chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee. The Peer Review Oversight Committee assists the CBA in an advisory capacity in its oversight of the peer review program. As with all appointments and reappointments, I have verified that the individuals have met the requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to serve not only as a member, but also as leadership of the Peer Review Oversight Committee. I then first recommend Fiona Tam be appointed as a member of the Peer Review Oversight Committee effective November 16, 2017 through November 30th, 2018. Even though Ms. Tam's qualifications deviate from the presently established qualifications of the Peer Review Oversight Committee, she is not currently practicing public accountancy, but she has a strong background in public accounting. She was a senior audit manager at KPMG for 9 years, and she is currently the vice president of PennyMac, where she works with all levels of personnel, including senior management and PennyMac's independent external auditors on financial reporting matters.
Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Savoy for the recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Mr. Silverman. Any comments or questions from the board members? Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote.
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Kathleen Wright,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park,
Yes.
and Jan Yang.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the vote passes unanimously.
My next recommendation is that Renee Graves be reappointed to the Peer Review Oversight Committee effective December 1st, 2017 through November 30th, 2019.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Savoy. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and I got Ms. Robinson. Okay. Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Jen Oyang,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
and Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
With that, the vote passes unanimously.
And lastly, I recommend that Jeffrey DeLizer be reappointed as the chair of the Peer Review Oversight Committee, effective January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018.
A motion by Mr. Savoy, is there a second?
Second.
Second by our new board member, Ms. Nicholson. Is there any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
Kathleen Wright,
Yes.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park,
Yes.
Jen Oyang,
Yes.
Carola Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhell.
Yes. With that, the vote passes unanimously.
And that, Ms. President, concludes my report.
Well done. Thank you very much. Okay, well, moving on to item 3, report from the Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Silverman.
Thank you, Madam President. We have one item to consider, review of the CBA's fund condition and consideration of possible fee changes. And I'll hand it over to Deanne Pierce, our Assistant Executive Officer.
Thank you. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide the California Board of Accountancy with the status of its current and future fund condition, which I'll refer to as the Accountancy Fund, and to consider a possible license renewal fee increase to $250. This increase will provide the necessary resources for the CBA to transition from its current database, ensure sufficient reserves exist for budget augmentations, and the more critical reason is to ensure enforcement responsibilities are met. I want to first start with some historical information regarding the CBA's budget and concerns raised by the legislature. As you may be aware, the state of California initiated loans from numerous special funded agencies, including the CBA, for the purpose of augmenting the general fund. Over the course of 10 fiscal years, the CBA provided general fund loans in the amount of approximately $31 million. The repayment of these loans plus interest occurred in fiscal year 15-16 and 16-17. Although the repayment of the general fund loans has significantly increased the accountancy fund, as I will discuss shortly, the CBA is operating a structurally imbalanced budget as expenditures are outpacing revenues. In addition to the loans to the general fund, the CBA had several fee changes between the mid-90s and 2000. This was due to a provision in the CBA's law that required the CBA to maintain its accountancy fund at a 9-month reserve level. A month in reserve, or MIR, is a calculation of the number of months of anticipated budgeted expenditures the CBA has in the accountancy fund. The mandated 9-month in reserve level required ongoing and frequent changes to ensure compliance with the statute. Between July 2000 and June 2011, the CBA was able to maintain its license renewal fee at $200. Beginning July 2011, however, the CBA reduced this fee to $120 temporarily as the accountancy fund was approaching historically high levels of around 17 months in reserve, which, as previously noted, was out of compliance with the statute at that time. Following this, via Senate Bill 80, the 9-month accountancy fund requirement was eliminated, and the CBA is now required to comply with Business and Professions Code Section 128.5 and maintain, but not exceed, 24 months in reserve. The CBA determined that the reduction of the renewal fee to $120 did not have the anticipated impact on the high reserve level in the accountancy fund because of several unanticipated cuts in spending and hiring freezes that were mandated by the governor. Members at that time felt lowering the reserve further by creating an imbalance between revenues and expenditures was necessary given the loans to the general fund. As such, the CBA initiated another temporary fee reduction that became effective in July 2014. Those fees are described on page 2 of the agenda item. In fiscal year 14-15, the CBA conducted an analysis of the accountancy fund and fee level structure and initiated a rulemaking to restore the license renewal fee to $200. This would resolve the structural imbalance in the fund level and increase the CBA's months in reserve, which at that time was projected to be at approximately 6. The regulatory proposal was not approved by the Department of Finance, likely due to the impending repayment of the general fund loans. As a result, the license renewal fee of $120 was reinstated beginning July 1, 2016. Adding to the CBA's discussion regarding a possible fee increase is guidance received during the CBA's sunset review in 2015. During the various meetings that were held, the legislature expressed concern regarding whether the CBA would have sufficient funding to investigate and prosecute a case against a large accountancy firm. The CBA is authorized pursuant to Business and Professions Code Sections 5025.1 and 5025.2 to obtain additional funding and resources it may need to address enforcement matters. One provision allows the CBA to contract with CPAs as consultants and experts to assist in the investigation and prosecution of enforcement matters. The other provision provides the CBA $2 million of additional expenditure authority from its reserve to fund unanticipated enforcement and litigation activities. The legislature indicated that to ensure sufficient resources are available for possible enforcement needs, it supports the CBA maintaining the accountancy fund at a 24-month in reserve level. This level is specific to the CBA and may not be consistent with what other boards have been directed to maintain. On Attachment 1, which is a fund condition analysis that was prepared by the Department of Consumer Affairs, it reflects that as of July 1, 2017, the accountancy fund is at $31.7 million or 26.9 months in reserve. This is a result of a lump sum received to repay the CBA's prior loans to the general fund. However, as demonstrated in Attachment 1, the accountancy fund and corresponding months in reserve level drops in future years due to an imbalance as expenditures continue to outpace revenues by approximately $3.5 million per fiscal year. As identified on page 4 of the agenda item, enforcement expenditures have significantly increased in the prior 3 fiscal years. The CBA spent $688,000 in fiscal year 13-14 compared to $1.2 million last fiscal year. The CBA must also ensure it has sufficient resources in the event it needed to exercise its emergency $2 million annual contingency budget clause for enforcement or litigation activities. As identified on page 4, the CBA's enforcement expenditures can escalate and range depending on the type and complexity of the case. In the past, the CBA has incurred over $600,000 on a single case. Any matters that result in litigation can likewise have excessive costs. One prior litigation matter exceeded $8 million. As stated previously, enforcement funding was a significant concern with the legislature during the prior sunset review process. As the CBA will undergo sunset review in 2019, the CBA must be prepared for similar questions regarding whether it has sufficient resources available to handle large enforcement matters. Should the CBA consider a fee increase, staff are proposing the license renewal fee be $250. As identified on Attachment 2, this will eliminate the imbalance of revenues and expenditures, provide resources for transition from its current database, and ultimately reach at or near 24 months in reserve by fiscal year 22-23. As the initial license fee for CPAs and firms are tied to the renewal fee, those would increase to $250 as well. Any other increase in fees would not have the intended result. This would include examination fees, application fees, and any changes to cost recovery. Fee changes must be done via the rulemaking process and be approved by the Department of Consumer Affairs, Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, the Department of Finance, and the Office of Administrative Law. Based on direction from the legislature to ensure sufficient resources to fund unanticipated enforcement or litigation matters and enable the CBA to transition to a new database system, staff recommend the CBA direct staff to provide proposed regulatory language at the January 28 meeting that reflects a license renewal fee increase to $250. And before I turn it back over to the chair, I just wanted to make mention that although I didn't include it in the agenda item, I do have information on license renewal fees charged by other state boards of accountancy. I just polled, I think it was about 7 different states. They range anywhere from $100 to $255 for an active license renewal, for a 2-year license renewal. I also checked internally here within the Department of Consumer Affairs, some of the other regulatory boards, just for reference, and they range in cost from $115 for engineer up to $650 for dentists. So it's a pretty big range in there. So with that, I will turn it back over to the chair, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Any comments or questions from the board members? Ms. Wright?
Thank you for your presentation. I do have 2 comments. I actually had a third, but you just addressed it with the information that you just provided. First off, one of my concerns is the erratic nature of the fee. This doesn't digest well, so to speak, in my field. As a point of comparison, when the state enacted LLC, limited liability company legislation with a fee based on gross receipts, when it was initially enacted, it was computed pursuant to a study that had economic flaws in the assumptions, and the fee doubled, or tripled rather. I mean, it doubled every year for the first 3 years and then went down dramatically, and the result was that the public complained bitterly to the legislature and said, we can't manage our costs. A measured progression of fee increases is what you would customarily expect to see, what you would digest without any problem, as costs go up typically 7, 8, 9, 10%. Now, we're doubling the fee with this proposal. And so I'd like to understand why. I mean, I looked at the chart and the numbers and whatnot, but I just am concerned about, quote, the erratic nature of the fee. That's point 1. Point 2 is normally when you increase revenues in any domain, the first thing you do is analyze expenses. And I didn't see any expense analysis included in this report.
Do we have a report that we can?
We do. We have, I didn't provide it for the meeting materials, but I can certainly provide it for the January meeting. We have, in the prior 2 attempts to adjust the fee level for the board, we do a pretty thorough detailed analysis of all the different functions that are done throughout the board. It details all the different steps that are required, who does it, the level of classification, the salary, the time, and it does it. We have it kind of computes out to make sure that we're charging a fee that basically covers, what it costs to do, provide services. So although that wasn't in here, that is something that we do have and we do put together, and it details out, and I'm sorry, I don't have a copy here for everyone. We'll be updating it, but it details out the costs for the renewal unit. It details out the costs for the administration for their portion and the enforcement and licensing. So it provides a very detailed breakdown and then gives a kind of an overall cost per renewal for each person on how much it actually costs to process the renewal. So that would be, I think, similar to the analysis that Ms. Wright was mentioning.
Okay, then, just as my last, really question for information for me to understand, and I've made this comment before, so here we go again. The cost of enforcement in large part, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because that's why I'm asking the question, the cost of enforcement in large part is supposed to be recovered from the person, the wrongdoer, so to speak. And as I've stated before, or mentioned before, we frequently forgive those costs. And if we did recover all of those costs, would that have an impact on this fee increase?
Well, the CBA is budgeted specific money, personnel years for all the staff in the enforcement division. So the cost recovery, and Mr. Franzella is here, he could probably provide more input, but the cost recovery isn't necessarily focused on recovering all of the salaries and wages for the enforcement staff in the performance of their duties.
Mr. Frenzel?
Correct. The licensee's renewal fees bear the cost of the regulation by the Enforcement Division. The cost recovery element is a section within the board's Business and Professions Code that allows it to recoup its cost. It's not designed to cover the cost of the enforcement program. It's a mechanism to recoup costs that were expended, but it's also, as I've communicated in the past, it's a discretionary tool the board can use and can lower costs as it sees fit. So reducing the cost has no impact to the enforcement budget and the money spent on enforcement.
So the cost of enforcement, the large bucket of costs would be unrelated to the cost recovery of that would be incurred directly related to a proceeding.
Correct, if I understood that.
In other words, there's a lot of enforcement activity that goes on that is funded through your state budget that has nothing to do with the specific allegation against a particular CPA.
Again, it's not allocated by the state budget necessarily. It's allocated by the licensees, or we're a special fund agency. The licensees pay.
I think I
pay
get
that
it.
part. So,
Okay.
yes, it's, as Ms. Pierce had indicated, it's budgeted for in staff personnel cost based on the position, not based on the enforcement activities.
Okay, then what would be the ramification to your numbers and reserve and whatnot if this fee increase were phased in rather than doubled in a single year?
I mean, I don't have that specific layout here in front of me, but I would say it generally takes 18 months to 2 years to do a renewal fee change. So and we usually keep it in place for 2 years so that all licensees, receive the benefit of whatever that fee is. So I think it would, show an increasing fee over a few years. Not knowing what those fee levels are proposing, I would have to go back and kind of look at the numbers and see the impact on the actual months in reserve and the accountancy fund level. So it really depends on what the fees would be proposed at, how long they would be in place, how much they would escalate in future years. I think that based on the information provided in the attachment, if it was less than what was being proposed, it wouldn't meet the 24 months in reserve, which was kind of what the legislature had suggested that the board reach in the future.
So this is direction from the state in terms of the fee increase?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
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 Mr. Pamela, real quick, and then.
Yeah, just clarification on the 9 months going to the 24 months. So is that a law change or a suggestion from the state?
That was actually a law change in 2011 that eliminated the 9-month mandated reserve level.
Okay.
And now we follow Business and Professions Code 128.5, which I presume a lot of the boards, if not all of the boards, follow, which keeps it at a cap at 24 months in reserve.
So the best practice is to be at or around that 24-month reserve.
I would say
With
for our
every
board, since that's the direction that's been given by the legislature, yes. I don't want to speak on behalf of other boards, but yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kaplan?
Just had a reaction to the comment about erratic fee changes. I mean, I thought the memo we got did a great job of putting the history in place. This fee was at $200 renewals for a long time. We took an erratic move to take action on the fund condition to reduce reserves, and those things took forever to implement, from deciding, getting the rulemaking, and approving it, and allowing to have a lower fee. And again, there was another action taken that mitigates why the fee's not back up to $200 automatically, and that was just something that occurred in the process. But I do not find this change erratic. it sounds like there's an option that we could grade the change or adopt something that's graded. We don't have that analysis, but just looking at the history, looking at the overall cost structure of what we've got, I mean, I just don't see $250 being an unreasonable place to get to. So that was sort of one reaction. And then the secondary thing on the expenses, that's a regular part of our reports that we get. And these are laid out in the handout, or attachments 1 and 2 do have a projection of what those expenses are expected to be. Again, they tag off of the current budgets and that are approved for this particular organization. So information's in there.
Ms. Melina, sorry. Hello, Ms. Melina Lopez.
Thank you. Just for my information, I wonder what is the highest that this fee has been in the past and for what period of time it was?
The highest fee, as far as I'm aware, is $200, and that was in place for I think about 23 years when we were doing our research. It was at $200, and started between 95 and 2000. There was some fee reductions in there, but prior to 95, it was $200. Then they took some reductions at one point down to $50, and then in about 2000 to 2011, it was back to $200, and that's been the highest that it has been that I'm aware of.
Currently, the fee right now is $50?
Currently, right now, it's $120.
And another question is, were the licensees, maybe, I wonder if your perception is they understood why it was decreased so far down to $50 when that change happened?
Probably not. I don't think they understood. It was a surprise that we were able to get that done. Insofar as we were owed $31,270,000 from the general fund. We talked about 0 renewal fees, but we knew that wouldn't fly. We went down to 50, and that was allowed to try to show them that we really need our money back. Well, now we got our money back, but there's other reasons because of changes from 9 months to 24 months. We have to raise it back. We tried to get it back to 200. They only allowed us to go back to the 120 because they said at the time we had too much money.
Right.
Because they started giving us our money back. So the $200 for 23 years really required an increase over time, but there were other facts and circumstances that kept us the same or started to reduce it. Now the realistic thing is it needs to go back up, like everything else in this world.
Yeah. Ms. Salazar?
Thank you. I'll lead with, I do support a license renewal increase to bring the months in reserve back up. But I do want to bring the board, we've got some new folks here, a little bit, at least of my recollection of history. We did have, it's referenced on page 2, we did have a regulatory approval that was not approved. And my recollection at that time was part of our fee evaluation involved considering the barriers to entry into our profession and keeping those costs lower on the front end. And so I do see that this proposal addresses the license renewal fee and then leaves those sort of upfront fees unchanged. So my question would be, was that part of the evaluation? And it's okay if it isn't, but my concern is that we periodically do revisit it to make sure that we do consider our barriers to entry within our profession, as well as our need to balance costs and months in reserve and the needs of our licensees. So with that, I turn it back over.
When we were initially looking at the fees and trying to, and we did some preliminary analysis, we tried to come up with a number where we looked at a reduced examination fees like we had in place a while ago. And I think even though it's not a significant portion of the budget, it did pull away from us trying to reach that 24-month in reserve. The numbers that I was running at that time was what we had previously, that 50 and 25 for the initial exam fee, and the repeat was at 50 and 25, and then the application fees were at a reduced number as well. So we ended up not moving forward because we were kind of more focused on trying to get up to that 24-month in reserve level. I can certainly go back and look at those reductions again to see how much it pulls away from the 24 months in reserve, but that was kind of the thought process behind it.
You know, my reaction is that it is, their fees are reasonable and they're supported, as I understand, by our costs today. I would just ask that as staff reviews these, that we do, as just part of that process, consider that, and it sounds like you did. So I just wanted to make sure that we as a board had considered the impact as we try to help support bringing people in. So thank you for the work. I appreciate that.
Any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Wright?
One last question. My comment, well, two comments. One, my comment related to the expense analysis was more focused on a budget process that would evaluate each expense line item to determine that the most cost-efficient resources and outside costs and whatever associated with the process had been evaluated. I don't suggest a zero-based budget necessarily, but something along those lines, and to support the increase in the doubling of the fee. So that was the basis of my comment, which I did not see in here. And secondly, the other comment is, it just went out of my head, actually, a moment ago. Let me pass, it'll come back in a minute.
Okay. Any other, okay, Ms. Leon?
Just for my understanding, besides the initial fees, the license, the initial permit fees, what else is on this line under 125700, other regulatory licenses and permits? Because both lines, the renewal fees and the above line, bring in about the same amount of revenue, and I'm just trying to figure out if there's any other wiggle room with other fees besides the first one that we just discussed, the initial permit fee, so that we won't just put all the increases on renewal fees, but we spread out the love, quote unquote.
I don't know if the county can do that, can we?
It would also impact the initial
Yeah.
license fees.
Is that the main thing there?
For
Right.
CPAs and firms as well. Tied
Is there
together.
anything else underneath in that line that's generating the 5 million that's very comparable to the renewal fees?
So the renewal fees are looking at, approximately, 25 or about 45,000 licensees renewing each year. When we're looking at the other regulatory licenses and permits, the initial licensing fee, which we do about 3,500 a year, so there's not going to be as a dramatic increase in the numbers there. Same thing with the initial licensing for firms. So there is an increase in the cost, but the volume of people that it's going to impact is going to show an increase in that other regulatory licenses and permits line, but it's not going to be as dramatic as the renewal fees.
Yeah,
Okay,
Just
no,
real quick.
that helps. I think, I also feel that it looks, consumers, everyone
Right.
at large is more sensitive when you go up, right, than when you go down. So having a more phased approach, or more, creating more awareness as to why we're increasing the fees, right? In a moderate, gradual manner, and they're still super competitive based on the research that we've done across the state and other professions. But I just want to be mindful of going up is not as easy as going down.
Agreed, going in that respect, and that's something we'd have to look at if we wanted to do a gradual increase and see how that would affect our accountancy reserve. So, and I know Ms. Nicholson had a question.
So basically, as I understand this, we're not in compliance now because we're getting paid way too much money that it was ours to begin with.
We are not in compliance. Yes, so we have to make that change.
So we have to make that change, but it rapidly goes down as our expenses exceed our income.
Increasing.
And so the fee, and I agree that going from 200 to 250 is not outrageous, although it might be a bit of a surprise, but I remember having paid those fees and I was fine with it. Especially for the privilege of, serving and being able to do my profession. But my question is, it doesn't seem, your budget number seems to be the same, so with the additional licensees per year, that would also change the bottom number, or how did the 250 came about? I'm trying to get that number.
How did we come up with the $250?
Correct.
We tried, I mean, we're at 120 now. We went back and plugged in 200 and just kind of kept edging up a little bit to see where we would get closest to the 24 months in reserve. And so it was kind of trial and error, like, for lack of a better word, to see where we were. I did have, when we were doing some preliminary review, even the fee at $225 would probably not get us up there. It would probably kind of keep us balanced around 16 months in reserve within the next 4 to 5 fiscal years. So, but how we came up with the 250 was just kind of trial and error with that and see where it put us.
Okay.
And I have another comment that actually I do agree with Ms. Wright, that probably we don't recoup the processing fees or the administrative fees for legal fees.
For the enforcement cases, we track the amount of costs that are spent on a particular case, and Dominic can, Mr. Franzella can jump in with more information. He's our enforcement chief. So we do come up with a number that is spent on a particular matter, and then that is one of the things that is negotiated between the enforcement staff and the respondent in terms of how much they can collect on that. And so I don't know if Mr. Franzella wants to provide some more information.
Yeah, absolutely. The board will never recoup all of its fees or costs associated with prosecution of a case, either for a couple of reasons. One, if it actually goes to hearing, you can't recoup the costs that are part of the prosecution, so the clock stops there. So we'll always outspend, even if we were trying to collect all of it up front. Secondly, the cost recovery it's not to be used as discipline. So you use it in a method of recouping your costs, but you can't be seen as punitive. So if there's financial hardships or other considerations or just an expeditious resolution to the matter, I'll bring forth reduced costs, and that includes any prosecution costs that we had incurred by the AG's office. As far as I understand with the budget, it's a lump sum dollar figure, and then we go through and allocate the money based on line items. But if we're underspending in one area, there's monies to be had for the AG's costs within the lump sum of the entire budget.
Real quick from our Secretary Treasurer.
Yeah, quickly, while I appreciate all this discourse, I think we're being short-sighted, and we're not being prudent stewards of the public money and our licensees' money by thinking in 1, 2, 3 year periods. We're talking about 5 to 7 years where we get in the proper condition that we're mandated to be in. And that's what we should be focused on, and I think a lot of this discussion is way too short-sighted.
Okay, I'm going to do Sunny, I'm going to do Mr. Jacobson, and then Kathleen will be the last word.
Just one question. I believe that there is a budget office. Can this item be discussed with the budget office with a long-term goal that Mr. Silverman just mentioned?
We do actually,
Yeah, please.
we do actually work very closely with our budget office. That's on an ongoing basis. Staff's in regular contact, not only when we do projections for fee increases, but just in the day-to-day managing of our budget, so we work very closely.
So then, so this item has been discussed with them, and what was their recommendation?
The attachment 1 with the fund condition level, where it shows that we're dropping off our months in reserve the farther out we get, this was actually produced by DCA. And so the attachment 2 is using their preliminary analysis that gets us out to fiscal year 1920. We've used the same information. That's why you'll see a lot of the numbers match up. We've just taken that and extended it out a couple of years, and then added in a fee increase so that we can make sure that we have that month in reserve level up into 24.
And just for clarification, the recommendation, though, to maintain as close as we can to the 24 months, that was a recommendation by the legislature, not by the Department of Consumer Affairs, though I suspect they would probably support the recommendation of the legislature.
Mr. Jacobson.
Yeah, I just think that I support the proposal for reasons that Mr. Silverman stated, and also it just seems, and you know, got to do what the legislature cues us to do, and being conservative in this fashion is a good thing, and it's a good thing for the public, for the consumers, and it's a good thing for our licensees also. And I would oppose the gradation process, because I think a Band-Aid should be ripped right off, and you know, rather than a few years of, oh God, it's going up again.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's going up again. And if we have some sort of a monthly publication, if we could just communicate this history, the understanding, what the legislature has talked about, what the things are that Mr. Silverman has talked about. These people are smart, they'll understand.
Ms. Wright, would you like the last word?
I would. Two comments. First off, my question of a moment ago. Long-range view, adequate funding, adequate balance in the reserve, all of those things are very important, and I agree. Bear in mind, we went and asked for a fee increase, and the Department of Finance turned us down. How do you plan to respond to the Department of Finance with this request?
We would, the same way we had in the past, we would justify why we think the fee increase needs to occur. There's no guarantee it will go through the regulatory process, and so, you know, I can't crystal ball and assure the board that will be approved, but I think we have, just based on the information we're showing here, I think we have a strong justification. And I think the Department of Finance's denial last time was based more on the anticipated payment of the loans as opposed to projecting going forward the needs of the board in order to protect consumers, but there would be no guarantee.
My second question is just a point of information or curiosity on my behalf, which is with respect to the projections that you do include in the materials, what were you projecting with respect to the number of licensees? Either the new applicants or the new licensees? In other words, what growth, do you have a growth factor in here, and is that something you could share with us? I certainly have an interest in how many people are interested in joining the profession.
I believe we were very conservative, but I'll let Deanne.
We were conservative, and I've got a whole folder of some backup documentation. If it pleases the chair, I could perhaps give that to you after the meeting and make sure that
Let's make sure it's in the January materials.
Yeah, but we do regularly, each year, we meet with Department of Consumer Affairs staff, and we do workload and revenue statistics, where we use prior numbers and project future numbers with regards to everything. How many people are going to be renewing, how many initial licenses, how many application fees, and we project out for, I think it's 2 fiscal years, and then that number we kind of carry forward. So we do lots of projections, and so I do have all those numbers, and I can certainly include those for January if that would please the board.
It's just interesting information to see.
Absolutely.
Where we're going.
I move to
Thank you.
adopt the recommendation on page 5, which, to paraphrase, just direct staff to bring regulatory language to us in January that reflects a license renewal fee increase of $250.
A second. All right, I have a first by Mr. Campos and a second by Ms. Hines. Any other questions or comments?
Just one quick question. Do you have Texas and New York
For
in your
the
survey?
let me see. I have, sorry. I don't have New York. I can get that. Texas was a little different. They're on a 3-year renewal cycle, and it appeared that it was a $66 annual fee.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Just
but
curious.
I can get New York's, and I can include that
That'd be
for
great.
the January agenda item.
Because they consider those two to be our largest constituent numbers, so I was just curious.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote. Oh, I'm sorry.
Comment?
Is there a comment from the public?
Did you say you're running in the red?
No, we're not running in the red.
No.
Are you close to the line?
Not,
Already.
not really, no.
In terms of our accountancy fund, there is money in our reserve fund, but on our yearly budget, we're running an imbalance, so we're not bringing in enough to cover our expenditures.
Yeah, I agree that you're being short-sighted. This is an important group, and the first phone call with the inspector.
Would you please come to the table if you're going to make a comment?
Okay.
And if you could please tell us your name as well.
Okay. Joanne Hinkle.
Work experience teachers pay $150. I believe you're being short-sighted. This is an important group. Budget is important. The very first phone call that I had with your inspector said, we don't like cases with lawyers involved. It gets too complicated. And so if you don't have the backup, the word will be out that just get an aggressive lawyer and the CBA will back off because they're running in the red. They don't have enough money. So I would like to say get as much money as you can. And, you know, I don't think you're asking a reasonable yearly fee or whatever.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the public? That will call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Soshi Leon.
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Carola Nicholson.
Yes.
Jen Oyang.
Yes.
Sunny Young Sun Park.
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar.
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Mark Silverman.
Yes.
And Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The vote passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Campos, for helping us beat the horse to death. So, all right, moving on to item 4, report of the executive officer. Real quick though, should I make this announcement about lunch? Okay, so when we were here in July, we had a really quick thing on lunch. There is an opportunity to pre-order lunch, and we have these little cards in the back. You can either write your order on there and take a picture and text it to the cafe downstairs, or call it in, correct?
Call it, or you can just put it in a text message and your name, and it will be ready when you go over.
So, in terms of time, you know, we want to make sure that everyone has time enough to eat when we go on our lunch break. Okay?
And the papers are on the back table.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right, keep going.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. So I have 3 updates on staffing that I'd like to share with you today. The first is Cindy Fuller, who is our manager in our license renewal unit. She has announced that she will be retiring from state service at the end of this year. And so Cindy has been with the board since 2008. After numerous promotions over her time here, she's served in that management position, has done an outstanding job, many process improvements in that unit, timeframes. She's done a great job with her team, and so we're going to miss her. But we know her husband and her grandchildren are going to really enjoy having that extra time with her. So big congratulations to Cindy on her upcoming retirement.
All right.
The second announcement is the promotion of Suzanne Gracia in our exam unit. Suzanne has been promoted to management. She'll fill the position that was vacated by Veronica Daniel. Suzanne has been with the board since 2004. Again, after numerous promotions, she most recently served as the exam coordinator in our exam unit. Many of you know Suzanne. She was our primary tour guide on the tour of our new office. She also is often the face that you see out on campus doing a lot of our presentations on licensing and exams. So big congratulations to Suzanne, and we're happy to have her on the management team. And last but not least, Angela Contreras was recently...
Wave to everybody. There you go.
She was hired in August of 2017 to work in our administration unit as our receptionist, and Deanne very quickly recognized her and recently has transferred Angela to serve as her assistant. So we're happy to have her in the executive unit.
You're welcome.
And with that,
If I may, Madam President, turn it
Absolutely.
over to Mr. Bone to cover item 4B.
Thank you, Madam President and members. First, I'd like to extend my appreciation to the CBA members, staff, and Cal CPA representatives for all their time and efforts to help prepare and execute our outreach events that were held during the September CBA meeting, which was held at the campus of Cal State Fullerton. Nearly 70 students attended those two events. Students who came to our evening event were able to sit down for one-on-one consultations with our licensing staff to get individual questions and assistance about their particular circumstances. Those events were broadcast live through our CBA website and are archived and available for viewing now. In addition, we were very fortunate to have such helpful and gracious hosts at the university. I received very positive feedback from the accounting department there, and they have distributed other materials that we have provided along with a copy of the video to their students. And in particular, they were very pleased with the breakdown that our staff gave in terms of which classes that were offered at Fullerton met which CBA educational requirements. Madam President, as you know, October was a very busy month for you.
It was.
First, on October 21st, President Berhow was the keynote speaker at the 31st anniversary dinner and officer installation for the Philippine American Society of CPAs Los Angeles chapter. Then on the 24th, Madam President spoke at Golden Gate University on the topic of professional ethics and the consumer impact. That's a part of the Braden Leadership Speaker Series that is held every year there. Approximately 45 students, university officials, and members of the public heard her remarks. Staff distributed materials regarding the requirements for licensure to the students that were there in attendance. Finally, from October 21st to November 1st, President Berhow attended the NASBA annual meeting, which was held in New York City, as you spoke about earlier today. And in fact, today, CBA staff, despite the weather, are at the Cal CPA Sacramento Chapter Student Outreach Luncheon, which is being held now at CSU Sacramento. Staff will provide written materials that discuss the education, examination, and experience requirements and answer any student questions. And about 100 students are expected to attend at that event. That concludes my remarks, Madam President, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Bone, for guiding me through the month of October. It was crazy, but the staff did a great job in getting everything together. So I wanted to open up to the board members if they had any questions or comments. Any comments from the public? Okay, that, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 5, report from the Enforcement Advisory Committee and Qualifications Committee, Peer Review Oversight Committee, and we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Rosenbaum if he is available. Welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much. My name is Joe Rosenbaum. I'm the chair of the Enforcement Advisory Committee. We held our last meeting on October 19 in Burbank. At this last meeting, our EAC members reviewed and provided guidance on 15 open cases and reviewed 16 closed cases. The EAC also held 5 investigative hearings. Our next meeting will be held on February 1, 2018, here in Sacramento. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the board members? Any comments from the public? Thank you very much, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item B, Qualifications Committee, Mr. Evans.
Good morning, President Berhow, members of the board. I'm David Evans, and I'm the chair of the Qualifications Committee, and I thank you for your reappointment. I'm pleased to be here today. For your information, the Qualifications Committee met on July 26th at the Westin Pasadena Hotel and on October 25th here at the CBA offices in Sacramento. There were also subcommittee meetings held on July 19 at the CBA office in Sacramento and October 18th in North Hollywood. At these meetings, there were a total of 20 Section 69 reviews and 1 personal appearance. 17 were approved and 4 were deferred. During the October 25 meeting, the Qualifications Committee conducted its annual audit of files approved for licensure. A total of 100 files were reviewed, and the Qualifications Committee concurred with staff's assessment on all 100. The committee's next meeting will take place on January 24th in Southern California. With reference to item 5B2, in July the committee approve the 2018 meeting dates listed in this item, and the committee recommends approval of these dates. That's my report. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments from the board members? We need to take a motion for okay. So, where are the dates? Okay, so the dates for the qualifications committee would be January 24th, 2018, April 25th, July 25th, and October 24th. Is there a motion to approve those dates?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I have first by Mr. Campos, and a second by Ms. Nicholson. Is there any other questions or comments from the board members? Any comments from the public? That will call for the vote.
Kathleen Wright,
Yes.
Mark Silverman, Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson,
Yes.
Sunny Youngsum Park,
Yes.
Jen Yang,
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Soshi Leon, Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhout.
Yes. Okay, with that, the vote passes. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Evans, and congratulations on your reappointment. Okay, moving on to item 6, the report of Enforcement Chief, Mr. Franzella.
Thank you. So, item 6A is the enforcement activity report. First, obviously, it has a significantly revamped design. I'd like to extend my appreciation to Seek, who you all acknowledged earlier. She pretty much shepherded the majority of this and dealt with me nitpicking along the way. So, thank you to her. So,
You
all
mean
kind
the
of.
department's leader wasn't the driver behind the new design?
I wanted something new.
Something fresh.
And I said I wanted something prettier, and then she ran with it. So, so with that, I'll kind of just go through the report. Please feel free to ask questions along the way. So this report covers 3 months of data through September 30th of this fiscal year. We've received 468 complaints. I understand there is another batch that was coming through for internal referrals, so I anticipate that number will continue to rise as we go through the year. You will notice last year and this year, so far this year, we've seen an increase in the number of external complaints. The primary driver behind that is actually how we classify how we historically classified certain complaints as internal. After more evaluation on it, they should be properly captured as an external complaint, so you're going to see that number kind of increase over time. On page 2, we just wanted to increase exposure to the nature and the types of complaints, so those are the pie charts you kind of see there. Any questions on the complaint types? No?
Are you seeing an increase, though, in external complaints? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
we
saying?
have seen
Yeah.
an increase in external complaints, but a primary driver, what made it jump from 484 in 15-16 to 604 the end of last fiscal year, a lot of it was driven by the fact that we were coding certain items as internal.
Oh,
and
that's
they
right,
should
okay.
have been they're more appropriately coded as an external complaint. So moving on to page 3, the investigations. You'll notice that 2 things. One, over the past 2 fiscal years and continuing on in this fiscal year, we're closing more than are being assigned, so that's helping with the aged inventory and managing the inventory more effectively. But we have seen an increase in the average date of close. Obviously, it's up to 244. It's down a little bit since the last report, which was 284. But we're seeing that because as we clear the old cases, the aged inventory, it's having a direct impact on the average date of close. I believe we closed 49 cases that were 24 months or older during that period, and that had a dramatic impact on the aged inventory. Investigations pending. You'll notice that we have under 1,000, and so that's a positive sign. We'll have to see if we can maintain that when we get the next influx of referrals. Cases over 24 months, at the time we ran the report, was 105. I'm happy to report it's down to 79 at this stage, and hopefully we'll continue to see that number continue to go down. We're not just trying to attack that number. Obviously, we're trying to stop the floodgates from behind as well. You'll see that we only have 16 cases that are between 21 and 24 months. At one point, that was upwards of like 88 cases. So we're trying to keep them from rolling into the 24 months and older as well.
That chart is really good. I mean, I focus not only on that. The department's done a very good job with cases and working through that. But you just look at the over 12-month categories, and if you add those up, I mean, you go from fiscal 15-16 where you had about 347 items there, and you're at about 217 and significantly down, it sounds like, maybe after. Who knows with the other changes in the other buckets, but that's great work. Great work.
Thank you very much. On page 5 is just some trend data that we're providing, just to kind of show it in a different form. Moving on to discipline. So far, at the time of this report, we had 27 referrals to the AG's office. That's up to 37. We're seeing, obviously, as we're closing the aged inventory, many of those end up in AG referrals. So we added another 10 since September. But our cases at the AG's office are significantly down over time. At one point in 15-16, there was as high as 139 cases pending at the AG's office. As of September, it's only 87. We work really diligently with the AG's office to get these matters resolved as quickly as possible. On the following page, age of complaints pending at the AG's office. There's 7 cases, actually there's 6 now cases that are over 24 months at the AG's office. As I've reported, the first one's been on here since forever. We did file the brief to the Court of Appeals, so hopefully we're going to see some resolution with that matter sometime next year. And then maybe it'll finally come off of the board's report. Moving on to the discipline and final orders, the board has taken action on 25 cases that took effect, I believe, just before September. So we'll anticipate another surge in that number from the September meeting and from actions taken today. Moving on to, this is a new section that we added on page 9, discipline and cost orders. As I reported at the September meeting, one of the things I was doing was trying to bring more exposure to the cost recovery element. Of the 13 matters that have taken effect up to September, of the 25 that took effect, 13 were matters the board ordered costs with. Our investigation and prosecution costs estimated for those cases was just over $177,000. And the board ordered cost of $138,000, so about 78% of the costs were being ordered. And then the chart right below it just monitors how much money was ordered during that year, and then how much we recovered. Those will never zero out. The payments are made generally over about a 2.5 year period by individuals, so they pay through multiple periods.
Ms.
May
Wright?
I ask a question?
Ms. Wright?
Okay, thank you. But there is a decline in the percentage. I think you may have just answered my question. Is it due to timing? And what I'm looking at is going on cost recovery from 16-17 to 17-18. And 16-17, that percentage, 324 divided by 395 is 82%. The comparable percentage in 17-18 for 3 months is 46%. Is it because, so question, what caused that variance? I'm not sure timing is the answer, and I'm not sure if that is the answer, that I understand why that is the answer.
It depends. So if you're looking at the, I guess the second portion there, the cost recovery, where it shows the $138,000,
Yeah.
and we've amount collected 64.
Yes.
That's not. That's just what we've collected to date. That's how much the board has ordered. Of that 138, I don't even believe any of these people have actually started paying yet their costs of the $138,000. This $64,000 that we've collected so far was probably from orders that were done at the end of last fiscal year. So the chart above it is the more representative
I get it. Okay.
amount.
Okay. Thank you. I understand.
Okay. Moving on to the citations, so far this year, through those 3 months, we've issued 27 citations. We did add a breakdown of the top violations. Obviously, if you add up the top 3 violations, it's more than 27 citations. That's because most people have multiple violations as part of the singular citation. On the following page, we participate, or we utilize, I guess, Franchise Tax Board Intercept program, where if an individual has an outstanding citation amount that we, after attempting to collect, we forward it over to FTB, which they can then collect as part of any tax return. And then those monies are sent to the board. And so far, somebody had a $16 tax return that we were able to collect so far for this fiscal year.
Well done, you.
But that number, obviously, from 15, 16, we had a large group that we hadn't previously been participating or utilizing FTV's Intercept program. So we had this mass kind of number that went through that represents the $287,000. As you can see, the 16, 17 so far this fiscal year, it's a much smaller. And I anticipate those would probably be more representative of the numbers going forward. Finally, on probation monitoring, that number continues to grow. I think we're up to now just over 160 as of this date. So the work in that department is steadily increased. We did 8 orientations that we've completed. We have another 20 set up. I'd like to thank Mr. Campos for his attendance at the EAC meeting where he sat in on I believe a handful of probation orientations, and those are really effective to communicate the board's expectations and answer questions at an early stage of any of the probationers. With that, I'll close up and answer any questions members may have.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? That, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 7, the report from the licensing chief, Ms. Sanchez. Hello. All good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, moving on to the licensing activity report, reflects the statistics through September 2017. In addition to the division statistics, we have received the NASBA exam summary report for the 2nd and 3rd testing window. So we got 2 of those attachments in the back. Those are attachments 1 and 2. But beginning on page 1, the chart and graph reflect the total CBA population, which is 103,634 licensees
Wow.
and registrants. Moving on to page 2, reflects the amount of contact that staff have with our stakeholders. You may notice that the exam unit under the telephone calls received is higher than the other 2 units. This is attributed to the score release for the 2nd and 3rd testing windows of the CPA exam applicants calling in, so we expect that to even out and be more reflective of previous years. Page 3 begins the statistics relating to the CPA exam. In the first 3 months of this fiscal year, we have approved over 1,600 applicants to sit for the exam and over 3,000 applicants to resit for an unpassed section of the exam. Page 3 begins the Yes, okay, so page 4 identifies applicant extension requests to extend a notice to schedule to take the exam or to extend a score for a section that is about to expire. So those also come from our applicants. Additionally, statistics are captured for the number of individuals who requested and were approved for special accommodations to test for the exam. Moving on to page 5 begins our statistics for the initial licensure of the CPA. In the first 3 months of this fiscal year, we have approved 583 applicants for licensure, and 148 were given the authority to sign attest engagements. Page 6 identifies that 54 California accountancy firms have been approved for licensure so far this year, and 14 out-of-state firms have been approved for registration. Moving on to page 7 is the renewal-related statistics. The second chart identifies, here, the second chart under license renewal related activities identifies that the staff has reviewed over 11,000 renewal applications already this year, and almost 2,000 have been identified with some type of a deficiency. Renewal staff work diligently with each licensee and contact them many times if necessary to get them into compliance. Lastly, page 8 identifies our retired applicants and our division highlights. The biggest highlight for me, of course, is as Ms. Bowers stated earlier in her report, Suzanne Grassi has been appointed to fill the exams licensing manager, and it is with bittersweetness that Cindy Fuller is retiring. I do, however, look forward to this coming year of getting to know a new licensing team and doing what we can to accomplish the mission of the CBA. So I'm looking forward to this upcoming year. Lastly, moving on to the attachments. Attachment 1 and 2 is the NASBA quarterly report for the second and third testing window of 2017 for the CPA exam. There are 2 pages to each attachment. Page 1 of the attachment is specific to California and includes statistics such as performance and rankings. Page 2 includes the same statistical data for all jurisdictions. That concludes my report, and I will now turn it back over to the President.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, Mr. Campos?
Yeah, page 5 on initial licensees, and I'm just making sure I understand these CPA numbers here. So you received X number of applications, you approved X number. What it probably doesn't tell you, and you get at it with the renewals, is what's sitting in a pending file, or and maybe there's some denials in here as well, but we don't get sort of more of a view into what's happening here in terms of there must be a denied population or there must be a pending population. And I'm particularly interested in backlog issues, right? And I think in general, I get the days to process. I assume those days to process are on those approved, since something may have been denied or what have you. But any additional color in future reports there would be helpful.
Yes.
And I think similarly on the renewals on page 7, I get the outstanding, I took it to mean that the outstanding deficiencies are those that are sitting in a pending file until these individuals respond and resolve the matter. And it'd be helpful to get some sense of aging of what's sitting in there and some broad buckets. You know, not all of that in your control, because it's not just your investigatory stuff, it's the applicant or licensee responding with information, right? So I think that would be helpful.
Okay, and a lot of the aging will be directly related to, on the licensing and examination side, related to the, applications expire after a 1 or 2 year time frame, depending on when we have identified the deficiency and whether it's exam or licensure. In regards to renewals, the 821 sitting, we give them time frames, 30 days, 60 days, and so on. So we could give you kind of an accurate count, or an accurate at least idea of what's in there. And then if they are non-compliant and don't respond at all, that's kind of what then leads to those enforcement referrals. But we do work diligently to try and get them in compliance before that, absolutely. But we can provide a little bit more, whether it's narrative or even more statistics on that in
Or it
future
could be
reports.
percentages. I mean, I'm not looking for exact numbers, but at least something that gives us a sense of what's that backlog look like.
Absolutely.
Okay. Ms. Wright?
Katrina, I think you were, no?
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I saw her first, but then we'll get to
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for including the exam results. I appreciate it and find it very interesting. Now that it's here, of course, that prompts a question. California, unfortunately, is below the national average on the pass rate. And what is interesting is for the 2 quarters that you do include, South Dakota, Missouri, and Utah consistently in both quarters are significantly above the pass rate and are in fact the highest. Is there any explanation for why California is below? Has anyone ever looked at that? Or maybe a better way to phrase the question is, who might be the appropriate agency person or organization to look into what are we not doing that Utah, Missouri, and South Dakota are doing?
I can definitely look into that. We currently don't look into that at all as, not overseeing the education specifically of CBA, that we haven't reached out to schools and found that information for this current trend, but we
I'm
can
not-
find out how or who.
Yeah, or who?
does.
Yeah, and let me know, because I think it would be interesting. This is a significant issue with the bar. The California bar pass rate really has gone down, and dramatically so. And so it would be interesting to see if there's any logic or explanation, or if it's just the way things are.
So real quick, I'm gonna have Patty talk about that.
So what we can do is we'll reach out to NASBA, the National
Yeah.
Association of State Boards of Accountancy, and see what type of research on a national level that they have done, and we can provide that.
That would be very, thank you.
Ms. Salazar, I hadn't forget. I haven't.
Thank you. You mentioned the calls that come in after the exam windows, and on page 3, you pointed out the average days to process. So my recollection is that our maybe internal goal is to be 30 days or less, and I recall that we had recently had some improvements to the materials available to our folks that are candidates and are sitting for the exam. Is there a correlation between the usage of those reports? Are we seeing any benefit from that? Because again, my assumption is that our goal is to nudge it back down.
And it has progressively gone down. It was up a little higher just if you look about 4 reports ago. So we're slowly getting that back down. I would say one huge benefit that's happened over these past several months is that we're fully staffed. Fully staffed not only in licensing, but in reception, in mailroom, internal process changes, fully trained staff, because even once new staff came on, so everyone's been working like a well-oiled machine around here. So that has definitely gotten us down to the 35. We're continuing to strive down to the 31 brainstorming session we've had in exams specifically is additional outreach. The typical questions that we're getting on the phones and the emails that may potentially slow us down in doing applications because we're answering so many calls. What can we get out there to answer those questions ahead of time to help our applicants and to move things smoother, faster?
Thank you for that work. Anything that we can do as a board to support that?
Thank you.
I'd be happy to hear that.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Comments from the public? Okay, with that, thank you very much. Sorry, all right.
Welcome.
Coordinate your math scores of the various states with the accountancy pass rates. And math is a subject now that is hated because it is mainly algebra and geometry. Consumer math has been thrown out of the schools. There is no fun math left. And so you might take a look at that. And so the students are not getting interested in accountancy. In 31 years of career ed, I can't think of one person that came in and said they wanted to be a CPA. It's something you may stumble into in college. But your CPA website for the career, your national CPA website is excellent. It's just that no one wants to be a CPA. No one wants to work in math the way math is taught. And I would say if you look at Utah, Missouri, and North Dakota, South Dakota, I would say they have outstanding, they have recognized that the kids need to have fun math so that they get interested. That would be my opinion.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Any other public comments? Okay, with that, thank you very much, Ms. Sanchez. Okay, moving on to item 8, the report of the Legislative Committee and the Committee on Professional Conduct. And we'll start with Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are going to start with item 8A2, discussion and possible action on proposed legislation to amend Business and Professions Code Section 5100 to further define that for purposes of subsections D, H, and L, that certified copies of records of the disciplinary or other actions taken against the licensee shall be conclusive evidence of the events related therein for purposes of determining discipline. Staff stated that the purpose of this agenda item was to provide the CBA the opportunity to consider and approve statutory language to amend Business and Professions Code Section 5100. Staff reported that at the September 2017 meeting, the CBA stated its position regarding Business and Professions Code Section 141. Specifically, the CBA affirmed that for disciplinary or other actions taken by other agencies, certified copies of records shall be considered conclusive evidence. Staff worked with the DCA legal counsel and the AG's office to prepare a legislative proposal to clearly articulate the CBA's position. By doing so, the licensees would not be allowed to impeach or challenge the findings of a prior final agency decision. The Legislative Committee discussed the difference between a certified copy and a true and correct copy and was informed by staff and Deputy Attorney General that the importance for allowing both is to avoid a delay in proceedings for obtaining a certified copy. Concerns were raised about the language implying they are the same and emphasized that a certified copy has more power. Staff stated that the proposed language allows for any future changes to agencies' policies in posting decisions on their websites in lieu of providing certified copies. The Legislative Committee recommends that the CBA approve the proposed language in Attachment 2 to amend Business and Professions Code Section 5100 and direct staff to seek inclusion in a 2018 omnibus bill or, if necessary, seek an author to carry a legislative bill. I'll turn that over to you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so this is a motion.
This is a motion from the Legislative
Okay,
Committee.
so this is a fully formed motion from the Legislative Committee. Is there any comments or questions from the board?
Second.
Well, hold on.
No. No, yeah.
Just have to have a
Yeah,
motion
that
and
was
a
a
second.
motion.
Oh,
before
okay,
you
so
have
it's a fully formed motion, so we don't need to second it.
Okay.
Yes. I'm right on this, right? All
Yes.
right, yay,
Yes.
all right. So, after all this time, you
When
would
it comes
think.
from a committee, you're good.
All right, yes, okay, so it's a fully formed motion, so questions or comments from the board? Mr.
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes, and I'm on the legislative committee, so I'm just going to express what I expressed then at that meeting. And that is that there is a difference between a certified copy and a true and correct copy. I can make a true and correct copy or affirm that something is a true and correct copy. Anyone can. Only a government can create a certified copy. It's the embossed or the inked stamp. And thus, the certified copy should have more weight or more, can be used in different ways than a true and correct copy. True and correct copy is just, I declare under the penalty of perjury of the laws of the state of California that the foregoing is true and correct. The state, the city, and where I signed it, and the date that I signed it. That's now we have a true and correct copy. And while it's true that someone can argue, wait a minute, that's not a true and correct copy, because look, on the website, it had 7 pages, and this one has 6 pages. Without anything like that, that is in fact accepted as a true and correct copy, and we're making a conclusive presumption that everything in there is true. That's what the proposed language does. It makes a conclusive presumption. Whereas a certified copy, which comes with an embossed or an inked seal, there's also the conclusive presumption that everything in there is true. But that's because it comes from a government, it doesn't come from me. And I just think that we have to put more oomph, more weight on a certified copy that comes from a government than something that just comes from me. There is a reason that when the legislature has both true and correct copies and certified copies. Otherwise, we'd have we'd call them all one thing.
Right.
And we don't. We have the certified copies, which are considered to have more oomph, and we have the true and correct copies that are created by any of us. So, for that reason, I oppose the
Okay,
motion.
good to know. Any other comments or questions from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Jen Oyang?
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Kathleen Wright?
Yes.
Alicia Burhow?
Yes.
Jose Campos?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
No.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
And Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the vote passes. Okay, moving on to your next item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next item is 8A3, discussion and possible action on proposed legislative language to amend Business and Professions Code Sections 5095C, providing attest services and 5130 application fee. Staff indicated that the purpose of this item was to provide the CBA with information regarding proposed language for inclusion in the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development, or Senate BMP, annual omnibus bill. Staff reported that each year the BMP committee provides an opportunity for DCA boards to submit non-substantive and non-controversial proposals for consideration in an omnibus bill. Staff stated that during a routine review of the Business and Professions Code, staff identified 2 sections the CBA may wish to consider making a non-substantive change that would assist in clarifying and updating current law. The first is Business and Professions Code Section 5095, which establishes the attest experience requirement for CPA licensure applicants who wish to be licensed with the authority to sign reports on attest engagements. Section 5095 subdivision C contains language that is no longer relevant. Specifically, it states, an individual who qualified for licensure by meeting the requirements of Section 5083 shall be deemed to have satisfied the requirements of this section. Section 5083 was removed from the Accountancy Act as it pertained to experience requirements for CPA licensure that existed prior to January 1st, 2010. The second Business and Professions Code Section 5130 requires the CBA to collect a fee from CPA applicants and states, the board shall charge and collect a fee from each applicant for the Certificate of Certified Public Accountant. The fee shall accompany the application, which must be made on a blank provided by the board. Staff stated that in order to add clarity and uniformity, it is requested to amend the word blank and change it to form. The LC recommends that the CBA adopt the changes to Business and Professions Code Section 5095C and 5130 as identified in the attachment and direct staff to seek their inclusion in a 2018 omnibus bill, or if necessary, seek an author to carry a separate bill.
All right, so this is a fully formed motion from the Legislative Committee. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Is there any comments from the public? Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote.
Okay, Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Jose Campos? Alicia Burhow?
Yes.
Kathleen Wright?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson?
Yes.
Sunny Youngsun Park?
Yes.
Jen Oyang?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, with that, the vote passes. Thank you very much. Do you have anything else?
That concludes my report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hines. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the Committee of Professional Conduct. Mr. Familet?
We have 2 items. First item is 8B2, discussion regarding whether to allow continuing education credit for licensees serving on the California Board of Accountancy or its advisory committees. Staff stated that the purpose of this agenda item was to provide the CBA the opportunity to discuss continuing education or allowing CE credit for licensees serving on the CBA or its advisory committees. At the September 2017 CBA meeting, CBA member requested the topic be presented for discussion. CBA determined that the prevailing consideration in determining whether CE is acceptable is that it must be a formal program of learning that contributes directly to the professional competence of the licensee in public practice. Staff outlined the relevant CBA regulation sections to provide members with a context for considering granting CE credit. Furthermore, staff provided an overview of the research of 15 other Department of Consumer Affairs boards and did not find any regulations allowing CE credit for their board members or committee members. Staff did not have a recommendation on this agenda item. The CPC discussed the topic and decided that it would not take any action on this matter.
Okay. Is there, do we need
Item-
discussion on that? Do we need discussion on that at all? Okay, so just real quick, is there any comments or questions from the board on this?
Yeah, I have a discussion.
You have something to say?
Yeah.
All right, let's have it.
The reason I brought this up as an agenda item was not to be self-serving in terms of the board. As vice president, you're involved in nominations and reappointments to the advisory committees. And knowing how difficult it is to get members in the profession to join those committees, I thought this would be something that should be looked at, not necessarily at the board level, but at the advisory level, as a little perk to get CPAs who ask how much time is involved in doing this work. And do I get any credit? No. They're not interested in doing this job, which for us is very important. So you can speak to any of the leaders of those committees or advisory boards, and they will tell you how difficult it is to get people in the profession to join those boards or committees. And that's why I brought it to this board, not necessarily to be self-serving for the CPAs on this board, but to get more people involved and interested by offering them something. Not unlimited 80 hours, but some portion of their continuing education so they're in fact rewarded or given a little perk to be on those advisory boards.
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, that's one of the things we've been having a problem with, for a while is, trying to get, folks that do want to join these boards. So I understand where that's coming from. Any other comments or questions from the board?
Do the members of those committees also receive per diem and travel?
Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, thank you very much. You want to move on?
Okay. Item 8B3, discussion and possible action to make non-sensitive changes to the forms incorporated by reference in Title 16 California Code of Regulations 9.1, 12, 12.1, 12.5, 15.1, 16, 19, 20, 43, 45, and 87.9 in order to update the California Board of Accountancy's mailing address. Staff indicated that the purpose of this item was to provide the CBA an opportunity to consider taking action to amend several CBA regulation sections and update corresponding CBA forms incorporated in those sections to reflect the CBA's current mailing address. Because these changes are non-substantive, staff plan to use an expedited rulemaking process known as Section 100 change, which takes effect 30 days following submission to the Office of Administrative Law. However, if this is denied, staff will request the CBA authorize the executive officer to pursue the proposed changes through the regular rulemaking process. The CPC recommends the following motion to the CBA. Approve the regulatory text and forms in the CBA regulations in the sections previously noted. If no adverse comments are received, submit the Section 100 change to OAL. If the OAL does not approve the Section 100 change, direct staff to submit the text and form changes to the Director of the DCA and the BCSH for review. If no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to make any non-substantive changes to the package, take all steps necessary to initiate the regular rulemaking process, and set the matter for hearing.
Okay.
Questions?
So this is a fully formed motion from the CPC committee, and just to clarify, OAL is the Office of Administrative Law, so just because we love our acronyms. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Any comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Abstain.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Jin Yang?
Yes.
Sunny Young Sun Park?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Kathleen Wright.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the vote passes. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9, meeting minutes, excuse me. We're going to go ahead and can I get a motion to approve the minutes, specifically agenda items 10A through E, and that would be the adoption of minutes for September 14th, 15th, 2017, our Board of Accountancy meeting, acceptance of the minutes for the July 20th, 2017 Legislative Committee meeting, the acceptance of minutes for the September 14th, 2017 Committee on Professional Conduct, acceptance of the minutes for July 6th, 2017 Enforcement Advisory Committee meeting, and the acceptance of the minutes for July 26th, 2017 Qualifications Committee.
So moved.
Don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry, is it 9? So, see, this is why you even put a 9 on there. You're awesome. Okay, so there's a first by Ms. Robinson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Silverman. Is there any questions or comments? Anything from my friend over on the left? No?
Actually, I do.
Thank you.
Rarely miss meetings, but since I was absent, is it protocol to abstain and not vote? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, we'll call for a vote.
Kathleen Wright?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Abstain.
Deirdre Robinson?
Abstain.
Sunny Young Sun Park?
Yes.
Jin Yang?
Abstain.
Corolla Nicholson?
Abstain.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Abstain.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
And Alicia Burhow?
Yes. Okay. Is that enough? Fantastic. Motion passes. Okay, so moving on to item 10. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Jacobson?
I'm sorry, if we could, since it is agendized, I would like to mention something. I had, in sitting on the Professional Conduct Committee, not considered the concept that Mr. Savoy brought up, which is that perhaps the advisory committees, not the board, could get continuing education credit if somehow I just think it should be agendized for the future.
Can we put that under?
It with specifically with looking at that and seeing if what they do fits into the requirements for continuing education.
So we could put that under future agenda items.
Thank you.
Ms. Hines?
I would just piggyback on what Mr. Jacobson said. I believe when we considered it in another context, we did have a report from staff about the places within which continuing education, such a matter could be considered. So if we're going to have the conversation, I think it should also include some evaluation as to whether or not it could be even accomplished and the manner in which it would need to be accomplished, whether it's something that could be done through a regulatory change, or whether it's something that would require a legislative change. Yeah, I think that would give us a much fuller discussion of the issue. So,
thank you.
Ms. Wright?
In light of Mr. Jacobson's comment, and one further possibility of what I was thinking is that perhaps as a little incentive, I mean, like you say, not the full 80 hours, but just a small incentive, maybe give them the 2 hours for regulatory review, because that's in large part what they do, and that would be a small small, but in a sense.
We'll add that onto a future agenda item. Anything else on that one? Okay. So moving on to item 10, other business, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants report on the meetings of the AICPA accountants attended by the California Board of Accountancy representative. I don't think we have a report. No? Okay. All right, moving on to item B, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy report on meetings for NASBA attended by a California Board of Accountancy member. Do we have anything on that? Nope. Good to go? All right, moving them right along. Okay. Item 2, report on the committee meetings of the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy attended by a California Board of Accountancy member. We have a report by Ms. Salazar. No?
The
Good.
meeting was deferred and has been rescheduled to immediately prior to our board meeting in January, so we'll have a report in January.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Is there a report on item B, Computer-Based Testing Administration Committee?
Nothing to
Nothing at this point? Okay. And is there anything on Continuing Education Committee from Ms. Wright?
Our meeting will be continued on December the 19th, so I should have a report for the January meeting.
Great. Okay, this is the fun part. All right, I'm about ready to lose all my power. So we're going to go on and move on to officer elections. Okay, so each year the CBA elects CBA president, vice president, and secretary treasurer. The CBA officer elections are held in the following order: secretary treasurer, vice president, and president. The attachment is a statement of qualifications from CBA member Michael M. Savoy, CPA, seeking to serve as CBA president. Prior to the leadership position vote, members that have not previously submitted a statement of qualifications will have an opportunity to express interest in the position, and all candidates will be given up to 5 minutes of floor time to describe why they are qualified for the position. Once all candidates are identified for the position and they have been provided the opportunity to address the CBA, a vote will be taken for each candidate starting in alphabetical order by the candidate's last name. The first nominee to receive a majority vote will win the officer position. The newly elected president, vice president, secretary, treasurer will assume their new respective offices at the conclusion of the meeting and will serve 1-year terms. Since the mailing of the meeting materials, no members have expressed interest in serving as secretary treasurer, but I would like to open the floor and see if any members would like to serve in this position. Candidates will be given up to 5 minutes of floor time to describe why they are qualified for the position. So I'd like to open it up at this time and see if there's any interest. Yes, Mr. Silverman.
I so enjoyed it this past year that I'd like to offer my name to continue it for the next year.
Wonderful.
And do you need some background on me?
Yeah,
or
I would
anything?
love to know all about you. So please tell us all about yourself.
I'm an entrepreneur in residence at Georgetown University's Business School. I'm a lawyer by training but don't practice. And I'm an angel investor in a number of companies, and I often take a position in the companies I invested in. Right now I'm actively involved in 2 pharmaceutical companies.
Is there anyone else that's interested in putting their hat in the ring for secretary treasurer? Okay, so with that, I think we need to call for a vote. Wait, comments from the, wait, sorry.
Is this a hand, individual?
Yeah, and I think we have to do comments from the, okay, so we have a motion to, can I make the motion? I'm going to make the motion as president since again, I'm trying to yield my power. I will make the motion to nominate Mr. Silverman as secretary treasurer for the California Board of Accountancy.
Second.
Oh my God. And a second from Mr. Savoy. All right, are there any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, with that, we'll call for the vote.
Alicia Burhill?
Yes.
George Familet?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Carola Nicholson?
Yes.
Jen Yang?
Yes.
Sunny Young Sun Park?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Okay.
Just okay? Really?
And Kathleen Wright?
Yes.
He's okay.
All right, with that, we have our newly elected secretary treasurer. Thank you again for your service.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, everyone.
All right, so moving on, since the mailing of the meeting materials, no members have expressed interest in serving as vice president, but I would like to open the floor to see if any members would like to serve in this position. Candidates will be given up to 5 minutes of floor time to describe why they are qualified for this position. Do I have any takers? Oh, look at you, Mr. Fenella, stepping up. All right, well, thank you so much. Would you like to go ahead and give again, tell us all about yourself and how amazing you are?
Yes, so just briefly on my background and then my interest in the role. Currently, I'm a tax partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers. My day job involves being the national practice leader for our indirect practice nationally for PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I work around the country running a practice with approximately 250 people around the country doing sales tax, VAT, and things like that across the country. My interest in the vice president role was working with the committees and carrying out the mission for the Board of Accountancy and working with the president to further the broader mission for the board. Thank you.
Wonderful. So are there any other nominations from the floor? Okay, seeing that, I would like to officially nominate Mr. Famila as the Vice President of the California Board of Accountancy, taking place as soon as this meeting is adjourned.
Second.
Oh, nice try. So close, Ms. Nicholson. I have a second by Mr. Silverman. So are there any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? With that, we'll call for the vote.
Kathleen Wright?
Yes.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson?
Yes.
Sunny Young Sun Park?
Yes.
Jen Yang?
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Luis Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
George Famulett?
Yes.
And Alicia.
Did you all
Alicia
me?
Burrell,
Oh,
yeah.
then yes. All right, with that, congratulations, Mr. Famila, on being Vice President. All right, here we go. At this time, Michael Savoy, CPA, has submitted a statement of qualifications for the president position. I would like to open the floor to see if there are any other additional members who would like to serve in this position. Let me think about this really hard here for a second. Candidates will be given up to 5 minutes of floor time to describe why they are qualified for this position. Mr. Savoy submitted his letter, but if there's anything additional you would like to say?
Actions speak louder than words.
Wow. I don't know where to go from that, but all right. All right, so I would like to officially nominate Michael Savoy as president of the California Board of Accountancy in 2018.
Second.
Oh, I saw Ms. Hines. All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Leon.
I love that humanitarian award note. Congratulations.
Oh,
We
yeah.
missed that party.
Thank you.
That was a really nice night. So are there any comments from the public? Okay, with seeing none, we will go ahead and call for the vote.
Alicia Burhow?
Yes.
George Famulett?
Yes.
Carrie Ann Farrell Hines?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Soshi Leon?
Yes.
Luis Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Corolla Nicholson?
Yes.
Jen Yang?
Yes.
Sunny Young Sun Park?
Yes.
Deirdre Robinson?
Positively, absolutely.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
I'll make it unanimous.
Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And Kathleen Wright?
All right, with that, the vote passes. Look at you. All right, well, thank you very much. All right, just real quick, I wanted to say thank you. This has been an amazing year, and poor Patty, I don't know how she dealt with me, but I do want to thank all of my fellow board members, especially Katrina Salazar and Jose Campos. You guys were great in helping me through leadership. And I, even though, again, I'm giving my power away, which is making me a little weird, I need to thank this guy. I need to thank Michael Savoy because he encouraged me to do this from the very beginning as a public member. It was a little nerve-wracking going through leadership and doing this board, but you know what? I've learned a lot, and I couldn't thank you enough for your support and encouragement. So thank you for that. So, all right, we'll move.
I'd just like to say, Madam President, that we appreciate your service. You did a phenomenal job, and we couldn't tell whether you were a public member or a CPA member by your ability to to preside over this, and we thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So, Mr. Fox.
And if I may, Jason Fox, Cal CPA. Thank you to Ms. Burhow for a very productive year. Looking forward to working with the new leadership next year. So thank you, and I would echo Mr. Silverman's comments. You play a very good CPA on TV. So
Thank you. Yeah, it's my, yeah, thank you. And thank you to staff. You guys did an amazing job in getting this office moved together and keeping things running. I really appreciate it. So thanks again. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move into closing business, and we're going to go ahead and move into public comments. So if I know we do want to have public comment. Before I have you speak, I'm going to go ahead and give my little spiel.
You need to post that on the website. We have no idea what your public spiel is about public comments.
Okay, well, this is why we're going to be, that's why I have to do it. So in order to allow the CBA sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, public comment will be limited to 5 minutes. Please make your comments focused and relevant to the duties of the CBA. It is not necessary to repeat statements or views of a previous speaker. It is sufficient to state that you agree. Written statements should be summarized and submitted to the CBA. They should not be read. The board values input from the public as part of the consumer protection mission. It invites the members, it invites and welcomes public comment during the section of the agenda. However, board members cannot engage in dialogue with those who testify during the section of the agenda due to the constraints imposed by the CBA and its members by law. The law prohibits the CBA from substantively discussing or voting on any matter brought up during the public comment. A member of the public who would like the CBA to discuss a public or a general topic not related to the specific case involving one of its licensees can ask the board to consider placing the issue on the board's agenda for a future meeting. If you have an application or disciplinary charges pending before the CBA, we ask that you do not discuss the details of your case or pending complaints, since the board members will be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in this case. So disruptive persons, under the Open Meetings Act, Government Code Section 11126.5, if you continue in this matter, I will ask you to leave the meeting, and if you do not leave the meeting, you will be removed. Accordingly, I am asking that you do not make any kind of disruptive comments. I don't anticipate that you will, but I'm just saying that for the record.
My case is one of the 2.5-year-old ones that's now closed, so I think that I can talk.
So if you could please say your name for the record.
Okay, I am Joanne Hinkle, 5 minutes.
Okay.
I am Joanne Hinkle, retired high school work experience teacher of 31 years. I help Labor Department inspectors file and process complaints. I also own usworkworld.com that writes lessons for 300 special ed continuation and prison high schools. I hope the CBA is not using Billy versus Arthur Young audits to prudent and reasonable investors to apply to trust CPAs who negotiate trust land deals, loan money to trust, place lien on trust assets, invite untrained disabled beneficiaries to their office to hand over estate 706 in yearly accounts, then charge beneficiary Mike $400 for asking too many questions. If so, Billy needs revisit, and I may just do it. Mike, my nephew, who has sensory integration disorder, asked me to help read the trust CPA statements of his grandparents' estate. I suggested we visit the CPAs. In the office, the CPA handed Mike a 706 estate account and said, "Ask your uncle what happened to $2.7 million." We could not understand. I researched and found Bill Downs, active in Cal CPA, as a speaker and trainer. I paid him to evaluate the trust account. Bill Downs said, "These CPAs can be reported." Thus started my journey with CBA. I filed complaints May 2015. Later, Mike discovered that the CPAs falsified the 706 Section 5 by switching one step-cousin from Mike's beneficiary category to a higher category, a switch not on any other document. Our research discovered why. $11 million disappeared during the brief time Mike's grandfather had dementia, and the estate closed with waiver of account by the higher category of beneficiaries. Mike was omitted from all probate court notices. By closing my complaints, here are the acts that CBA gave the green light for trust CPAs to do. Make $2.79 million received from a housing developer disappear from a trust account with no entry of where or to whom distributed. Omit entry for $5.5 million in property purchase that prevents verifying if a 1031 exchange by the in-crowd of beneficiaries was fair to all beneficiaries. Omit entry for distributions to 6 beneficiaries. It appears that the 6 may have been lumped into one entry that prevents verifying if the 6 distributions were fair to all. Omit liability entry of a $1.6 million loan from the CPA's private company to the trust. Omit liability entry that the CPA's private company held a lien on the estate's 215 acres. Not disclose to beneficiaries potential conflicts of interest for business deals with the trust, including a $685,000 loan from a trust of which the CPA is co-trustee. Most important, CBA gave the green light for using QuickBooks software, double entry, debit credit transaction pages as a yearly financial report for a $25 million estate. How's a beneficiary to know if money is coming or going with debits and credits? In CPA language, this is a change to a less preferable accounting method with improper presentation that leads to misleading financial statements. Fairness standards include use of appropriate accounting methods where options exist. Trust accounting options do exist. Using a fictitious trust title at the top of the debit credit transaction pages. Ignoring probate code that requires statement of trust assets, liabilities, receipts, and disbursements. Transaction debits and credits make beneficiaries guess what's a transaction, or which transaction is an asset, which is a liability, what's a receipt, what's a disbursement. In conclusion, as a teacher, I will loudly warn beneficiaries in California, yearly trust accounts you receive contain only the money and loans that the trustees and CPAs want to show. Do not contain the money and loans that trustees and CPAs want to leave off the books. That's okay with CBA. Beneficiaries are expected to understand trust accounts that use QuickBooks software, double entry, debit credit, transaction pages with fictitious titles, and do not expect any CPA notes. That's okay with CBA. Trust CPAs are not required to follow probate code. For statement of assets, liabilities, income, and receipts, beneficiaries need to learn to guess correctly what is a trust asset, liability, receipt, and disbursement. That's okay with CBA. Who does CBA protect? This nice group. Poor and disabled beneficiaries are trust CPAs. I must take the next step to publicly protect the poor and disabled beneficiaries from CBA's interpretation of the Accountancy Act. In addition, Department of Labor and the California Dental Board are honest. We enforce laws, and they give the website links to the laws. CBA says, we enforce Accountancy Act, professional standards, and generally accepted accounting principles. Not a link. For 2 years, and believe me, I've asked Mr. Fisher, Ms. Osgood, Mr. Franzella for links to laws. I was only given one link, and when I click on it, it says log into your account. My appeal that I'm going to do will include CBA honest transparency towards consumers by listing the laws, just like the Department of Labor does and the California Dental Board. And I have copies.
Okay. She allowed to give out copies? Okay. Staff will give out the, ma'am, Ms. Hinkle, we will go ahead and disperse the copies. All right, thank you very much for your comment. Okay, so we are gonna go ahead, and I know we already put one item on the agenda under 12B from Mr. Jacobson. Is there any other future action items that we need for a future meeting? Ms. Wright?
I made a recommendation at the last meeting, and I was just curious when that would be calendared.
Which item was that?
I beg your pardon?
Which item was that?
That was a discussion of interactive learning that had been part of a discussion of international standards of continuing education on the NASBIC committee, and also was an approach that's been adopted by the Board of Accountancy in Indiana. It's in the minutes.
I
It's
believe
in
you.
So any of the items that have been raised previously, one of the steps that we take with new leadership each year is we'll sit down with pending items and work with the president to determine when best to place those on the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Any other future items, agenda items you would like to place on the agenda? Anyone? Okay. At this point, wait, I need to ask for public comment, don't I? Any additional public comments at this time? Anyone, any takers? Okay, with that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to go into lunch, and then we'll move into closed session. And I think I need to read this. For closed session, then it's going to start at 2 o'clock. Pursuant to Government Code Section 11126A1, the board will meet in closed session to conduct an annual evaluation of its executive officer. And then we are going to go ahead and move into closed session regarding 11126C3. The California Board of Accountancy will convene into closed session to deliberate on disciplinary matters, stipulated settlements, default decisions, proposed decisions, and decision after non-adoption. And finally, we will get Government Code 11126E. The California Board of Accountancy will meet in closed session to receive advice from legal counsel on litigation David Greenberg versus California Board of Accountancy, Los Angeles Superior Court, case number BS 155045. And at this point, we are going to go ahead into closed session and to lunch. All right, we are now back in open session, coming out of our closed session discussion. We are now going to adjourn our meeting for the California Board of Accountancy. All business has been taken care of. Our next meeting will be in January of 2018. Thank you very much, and we will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.